Well, all right. Part two of doing Undeveloped Star Trek The Next Generation episodes. Blood and Ice. Now, this one is pitched here as The Walking Dead, but in Star Trek. Now, this is actually a thing that does actually get used in certain episodes in a small way, often with the Borg, because, you have a crewman get assimilated. Well, one of the things in the Borg episodes that they have done is the idea of getting infected with Borg nanites. And then those nanites slowly, start overwriting various of your bodily functions and then take control of your body. And now you're on the Borg team and attempting to assimilate your former friends. That is something that comes up in several of the episodes with Borg. Also, for some reason, Picard actually, in First Contact, specifically tells people that it's better to die than get assimilated, which, okay. His experiences in this regard seem to be very different from those of several other former Borg, but whatever. Anyways, but yeah, the idea of it being actual like zombies, though, that's a very different take on it, especially if it's, like actual like undead. You could, of course, go with a Resident Evil style idea where it's some sort of a pathogen that is, they're not actually like truly dead. The pathogen is actually preventing them from becoming truly dead in ways that don't make sense by real world logic, but hey, it's sci fi. Of course, the number one thing to avoid here is like actually using magic, but Star Trek has enough pseudo magic that pseudo magic would actually be a viable option too. I mean, some sort of technology that takes the corpses of the recently deceased and animates them like puppets. Not the Borg methodology, mind you, but like proper puppets instead of um, well, see, because like Borg drones are actually alive. They're not dead. I mean, they often get referred to as cyber zombies, but they're more, they're not dead. So it's uh, a different sort of transformation than being an actual zombie. It has many of the same ideas with that you have with zombies, though. It's like, oh no, this used to be your friend. Now it is an enemy trying to, kill you or assimilate you or something, something, something. Anyways, though, having this doesn't actually give the idea of why people would be zombies, though. Although it is apparently related to blood and fire, but blood and fire doesn't really explain its core mechanism for plot to happen either, as written out here. Although it does kind of sort of have something disease, but that is actually an interesting idea. Is like if you go with the blood transfusion angle, a version of zombification that can be cured by giving someone a blood transfusion. Oh boy, interesting idea. But yeah, let's see the bonding. It doesn't actually have a write up here. It says that it's in a reference book. I guess I would have to look up the Lost Voyages reference book. That's unfortunate. Okay, so Marius Hurley was originally planning to have the Borg be the beginning of season two of Star Trek The Next Generation. See, one of the key things that happens in the ending episode, The Neutral Zone from season one, is that Picard and the Romulan commander Tibok reach an agreement. Like, yes, Tibok is like, this is Romulan space. We're doing Romulan things for Romulan reasons here, and we want you to stay out. However, they agree that they have a common enemy, and that the threat that poses both of them is something that they have reason to be equally concerned about, and that they're not going to fight each other over it, and that they would be better suited to finding and eliminating this new threat because the Federation and the Romulans have an arrangement that is currently mutually beneficial. You stay out of our space, we stay out of yours, and as long as that arrangement remains in place, they're fine. However, a third party is not abiding by those rules and is killing a bunch of Romulans and Federation citizens, and neither party likes that. So they want to do something about it. That is how season two would have started. And while they did get back to the Borg plot later on, they introduced them in a very different way, and it doesn't involve Romulans, at least not in the same way. Like later works, Star Trek Online, Star Trek Picard, both of them have Romulans using Borg junk. Heck, Star Trek 2009 with Nero. Nero's ship had co-opted Borg tech as part of it. It's the reason why has all these toys that don't look like traditional Romulan technology. It's because of the fact that his ship was rebuilt from a Romulan mining vessel using captured Borg technology. And, that sort of a thing is something you could have a lot of fun with, I suppose. Breakout! I literally have no idea what that is other than the name. Seriously, I looked at this right here. It doesn't actually talk about an episode named Breakout. Now, here's a fun one. Jerry Taylor had the idea of having a two-part episode, the season finale of uh, season six, um, be an episode where the Enterprise D gets destroyed in a plot involving the Breen. Yes, the Breen went on to become a major player in Star Trek Deep Space Nine and were a race that was being introduced in the next generation. But they mostly got name dropped in the next generation. We very rarely actually saw them or even heard about them actually doing something. Usually someone just mentions they existed. Which, this would have actually been a full hey, we're here kind of thing, a race that is not completely unheard of by the Federation, but suddenly they show up at Earth and are like, "Hi, we're here to talk." Anyway, so they do stuff. The Enterprise D ends up being destroyed, and so on and so forth. Riker gets a ship called the Indiana. I wonder if we actually know anything about that one. See, the whole idea of Riker getting his own ship is something that they seeded as a plot idea so early in TNG that I'm genuinely surprised that they actually still had Riker on as the first officer of the Enterprise D up until Generations. Because in Star Trek Generations, they finally get around to destroying the Enterprise D. And, oh yeah, that's right. Riker still doesn't leave. They have Riker as Picard's first officer in all of the TNG movies. Uh, I know it's weird, but hey. Oh yeah. Apparently we didn't ever actually see it. It was supposed to be a Nebula class vessel. Interesting. Nebula class vessels are actually quite large. So, being the captain of one of those would actually be approximately as prestigious as a Galaxy class. Maybe a little bit less, but only a little bit less. But yeah, it's like all of this is just related to the unfinished script idea. Um, but yeah, like other than that, there's not a whole lot with this one. It's like, oh yeah, also Picard dying. Yeah, okay, that's a thing that is also a possibility. That's something that they tossed around as an idea several times, and having a season finale or series finale have Picard die is something that would probably have been controversial with fans, and it's probably the reason why they didn't do it. Is that they had seen the backlash from having Denise Crosby's character get killed off, and fans weren't actually all that happy with that. Thing is, though, this is all about how the people who created the series are projecting it. Because Star Trek as a whole very, very rarely kills off core cast members, like the actual like supposed stars of the show. Despite the fact that the ones that do get killed off usually are okay, you have the main cast, but you have the most important main cast, and then you have the less important main cast. In the next generation, Picard would arguably be the single most important of the main cast, followed by Riker and Data. You have a lot of competition for who would be fourth or fifth, but the top three would be those three. So the fact that they actually were planning to or considering killing off Riker and Picard, hey, those are things. Anyway, though, moving on. Although the thing with Riker being a someone who, in theory, should have already been given his own command because of just how stellar of a Starfleet officer he was, is a plot device that got overused, but but it got overemphasized. I guess is a better way to put it. Like when you have that Commander Shelby person show up on the Enterprise, she was actually told that the reason she was being assigned to the Enterprise is that she was going to be taking over as Picard's first officer. Commander Shelby had a strange uh, conversation with Riker because of the fact that Riker hadn't. I, in real world terms, what happened in that episode was utterly insane. No one in the real world would actually do something like that and not have repercussions for it. What Riker did in that episode was effed up. No freaking way should anyone do something like that. But that is what Riker did. And Commander Shelby was understandably pissed about it because the fact that she had been making a genuine, serious effort to be a good first officer for Captain Picard. She was doing her best to do a good job, and Riker just was like, "Oh yeah, we don't feel like actually letting you take over this ship. Go do something else." Now, from an in-universe perspective, Shelby actually was considered an outstanding officer and did not have her career be negatively affected by this. However, what the real question here is why wasn't Riker's career negatively affected by that? Because, like, Picard in several episodes talks about how Riker passing over and declining command positions would negatively affect his career. Well, this bullshit with Commander Shelby is worse because of the fact that he didn't. decline it until she was already there. Like, physically in person told her, "No, actually, we have, changed our mind, and we are not going to allow you to be commander of the, Federation flagship." Which is something that Commander Shelby was u utterly ecstatic about. It's like, "Oh, I get to be, Captain Picard's first officer on the Enterprise? Yay!" You could actually see the glee on her face when she, arrived on the, Enterprise. That was a very well acted scene. Really great. But again, I'm getting a little sidetracked. That is something that you could actually play with in a story, though, because if you're going to do an alternate timeline version of things, maybe have your party explore an alternate timeline where Shelby did actually take over as first officer of the Enterprise, and Picard did put his foot down on that one, because quite frankly, it doesn't actually make a whole lot of sense for Picard to be fine with it, the way Riker did that. It's like, because again, it's like that is something that by real world standards would be a massive um breach of ethics, among other things. It's like declining a promotion is one thing. Declining a reassignment is one thing. Doing so after your replacement has arrived is bonkers. Anyways, enough of that. Uh, all sorts of road not traveled things you could go with, and that's actually what a lot of these unused script ideas represent is different things that they could have done taking the series forward, and not necessarily things that are necessarily good ideas from an in uh, inherently good or bad, but they're just things that they didn't use. Changing seasons here. Let's go with that one. Oh yeah, this is one where they were planning on killing Riker. Well, that's another thing is that with changing seasons, because it has like weird time travel nonsense in it, they could have actually had Riker die and then undone his death by the end of the episode because reasons and stuff. And you know, also there was the weird notion of Picard's son doing stuff, which yeah, okay. To be honest though, Picard's uh past in TNG was actually not particularly well defined. Like, they have a few mentions where about his family, but not anything concrete. And the idea that maybe possibly Picard had children somewhere is something that they could have actually done, and something that they did actually play with in one episode with that Ferengi guy who found the son of someone who was related to, or okay, a former romantic interest of Picard who was actually not Picard's son, but who the individual in question didn't actually know who his father was. The Ferengi did a genetic test on him covertly and realized he wasn't Picard's son. So, in order to make him look like he was Picard's son, they gave him some sort of an experimental genetic treatment to rewrite his DNA to look like Picard's DNA, which of course caused him to have a medical condition where he was slowly dying. Yeah, that episode got interesting. Thing is, though, that individual wasn't a renegade. That was someone who was just like a nice kid who wanted to be a good Federation citizen and maybe possibly join Starfleet someday, maybe possibly. And that's as far as his character was defined. Now, the idea of Picard having a son who resents the fact that his father left him with his mother and wandered off to do space stuff, that would be an interesting plot point. See, because one of the things that we do know about Picard in The Next Generation is that Picard has actually been a Starfleet officer quite a while. He's not a young man. He and the fact that he's older than so many of the crew members that work with him is something that he finds to be quite um, patriarchal, I guess is one way to put it. Is like he kind of sort of does the whole like kindly father figure role in personal interactions, and that sort of way of having them look up to him is generally shown off as a positive thing. However, a side story where it went horribly wrong, that could be fun. However, that is about as far as we can go with this one because we don't really know a whole lot else about what they were planning here. I mean, maybe possibly you could look up whatever's on link number 10, but you know what? That is a good link to a Twitter thingy. Oh, wow. Okay. This is a very short document. But this is the sort of thing that you would use as an internal memo to uh, definitively state your feelings on something that was proposed so that people could have something to refer to so that they know this is what this person said. And of course, the Trek Docs people, granted, this was back in 2016, are like, well, we don't know anything else. So, anyways, other than that, that does give me an interesting idea. Is that due to time travel nonsense when your character will die. That would be an amusing plot element because that would actually be something that is a different way of using time travel in a story than any of the ones we actually did end up getting. It's like knowing your fate and trying to avoid it. Doing that in a TTRPG. See, it's the sort of thing they usually have as like a villain plot, not the hero plot. Trying to do it from a hero side would be very, interesting. It would probably have to put that as like a long-term goal of a character, not like a short-term, this is what we're doing today kind of plot thing. Although, as something that pops up on the spur of a moment because an opportunity presented itself. Well, oh yeah, and more Trek Docs things. Yeah, whatever. Skip those for now. Okay, the chaos theory thing. One of the things that I've noticed about uses of chaos theory, and as noted here, they never actually weren't new aware with this stuff. Most of the people who use chaos theory in fiction don't really understand the actual scientific principles that get called chaos theory. The Jurassic Park movies are infamous for this because they have this guy who's like, "Oh yeah, chaos theory. Chaos theory predicts that everything you try to do will go horribly wrong because chaos happens, and you didn't actually anticipate for that." Like, yeah, okay, whatever. Because while the guy in the movie does actually make predictions, none of his predictions are actually specific enough to be actionable information. He's a false prophet. He preaches doom and gloom, but he doesn't actually give viable prophecies. And that's the sort of thing that you end up with in chaos theory related stories, and something that they were genuinely right to avoid doing is just throwing the idea of chaos theory into the wind and hoping people are razzled and dazzled by the uh, cool sounding plots. Anyways, though, I think I'll leave that one here. It's like the whole idea of chaos and order and nonsense is chaos and order are functions of human understanding of the world around them. They're not actually physical forces of nature. Anyway, though, you could actually play with that in a TTRPG, I guess. I'm struggling to think of anything that I would personally consider be a good way of playing with that in a TTRPG, but if you try hard enough, you could probably think of something. Oh well. See you guys later.